I'm a guy that's 25. Lego Star Wars is my life. I like Ryan Johnson. I'm Rich Boy J. Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back with another video, and this is going to be another episode of collecting every Lego Star Wars minifigure that has been created. If you don't know what this series is all about, the title is pretty straightforward. I'm going to be collecting all the figures that Lego has made in the Star Wars theme. This does include the rare figures like the Cloud City Boba Fett and the Chrome Gold giveaway C-3PO. This does not include the rare one-off figures they made of rare Earth metals. Let's get started with today's figures. First up, we have a bunch of Han Solos. Lego has made a lot of Han Solos. The first one to the far left is apparently a Han Solo that came out in some 2008 Toy Fair Collectors Party giveaway. I have no idea what that is, but this is Han Solo with a black vest and dark blue legs from 2008. This is just one of the older Han Solos, not really too much to say about it. It is kind of interesting to compare this to the Han Solo that came out in the Betrayal on Cloud City set, just thinking about how now we have the dual molded boots, the side leg printing, the vest printing, updated hairpiece, updated headpiece. Like from head to toe, Han Solo has evolved so much past this figure. So pretty simple Han figure, no back printing or leg printing. This was just some giveaway at some random, it's not even a random toy fair, it's a random toy fair collectors party. I'd like to know where the heck they're having these collectors parties. Next up, we have Han Solo with the parka hood, tan legs, and holster. This came, this was a 2010 figure, but it came out in 2009 in the Echo base set. What I'm realizing is a lot of the figures that I'm buying now are 2010 variants of figures that came before that. I think 2010 is when Lego started actually including the pupils on Star Wars minifigures, so you'll see there are a lot of sets that came out before 2010. There are variants of them that are the 2010 variant that have the pupils on them, so that you'll notice a trend just with a lot of the figures that I'm picking up nowadays. But this is a Han Solo figure that I've shown you guys, I feel like quite a few times recently, but nonetheless, it's a decent figure. It at least has leg printing, and the torso printing isn't all that bad. I think the one we looked at last week had the newer style parka hood. This is the older style one that goes over the chest as well. I think the new one looks so much better than this one, but this wasn't a bad mold by any means back in the day. The final Han Solo we have today is Han Solo Light Nougat Black Vest 2010. Once again, a 2010 variant figure we have here. This came in the 2009 Battle of Endor set, and I don't know if this is a mistake. I assume it's probably some sort of mistake, but Bricklink says that this apparently came in the 2008 Death Star set, which doesn't make sense because Han Solo in brown pants was never on the Death Star. So I don't know what's up with that, but nonetheless, this is just another Han Solo figure. He's sporting the same torso as the one over here. He does have the brown pants with the holster. These are his Return of the Jedi pants. And he has the face print with the pupils on it. Still that old school classic Lego hairpiece. So, you know, this one is slightly updated compared to this Toy Fair giveaway one, but still, they've just made so many improvements to Han Solos throughout the years. Next up, we have some troops. We're gonna first start off on the left side with an AT-AT pilot. This came in the 2003 AT-AT, which up until this year, I would have considered the GOAT AT-AT set, but I think that our 2020 AT-AT has taken that mantle. But in regards to this figure, this is actually quite an expensive figure to get because it only came in that AT-AT, which still to this day is pretty sought after. I'm hoping the new AT-AT can maybe change that because it's just a better situation for everyone when Lego sets aren't expensive. But yeah, this is the original AT-AT pilot that Lego created. He's sporting the dark gray arms and legs as opposed to the dark bluish gray arms and legs. The current AT-AT pilots that Lego makes has the light bluish gray helmet. There's basically no white in those figures at all, which I actually read a picture on. The reason for that change was, I believe, the reference material that they got, it was overexposed and it made the pilots look white, when in actuality they aren't white. Like, you can watch movies, the pilots don't look white. But later on they were given correct reference material that showed that it was actually more of like a sand blue costume with a light gray helmet. So it's kind of cool to see that Lego has corrected corrected that over the time. It's weird looking at these old style pilot helmets where, I mean, it wasn't even the correct pilot helmet mold. They just slapped pilot helmet print on the Stormtrooper helmet. It's so weird to think that like this was just totally acceptable to us back in the day. I don't think anyone really complained about it, but when you compare this to what an actual TIE Fighter helmet should look like, it really is night and day. Other than that though, I think for its time, this was a very good figure, and like I said, a pretty expensive figure, so glad to have this in my collection. Next up, we have a Sandtrooper. This Sandtrooper was from the 2007 Imperial Landing Craft set. This is another variant figure. I actually had the Landing Craft set when I was younger, and I still have the figures from that set. The difference, however, is that the original versions of those figures had basically just a solid mouth pattern, whereas this one has the dotted mouth pattern, so this is the variant I didn't have from that set. Other than that, it's pretty much your typical Stormtrooper from that era with the solid black head, the giant orange pauldron. He does have a bit of back printing as well, which looks kind of nice. And yeah, not really too much more to dissect on this figure. Lastly, for this group, we have our Senate Commando. This guy is from a 2010 Magnet set. This is basically just the standard Senate Commando Clone Wars figure that you would expect. The unique thing about this one, though, is he actually came with a solid flesh-toned head in that Magnet set, so that apparently justified this guy having his own unique figure. In regards to the actual figure, I still do prefer the movie versions of these Senate guards. Fortunately, the Clone Wars version on this one, I feel it doesn't stick out as much. Like the swoopy lines on the torso don't pop as much, I guess, because it's on a blue base rather than a white base. So this is probably one of those Clone Wars troops that I wouldn't really mind having in a mock, even though I would prefer to have the movie version. Next up, we have some droids. We're first going to start off with this R5-D4 figure on the left. This came from, I believe, the 2007 Y-Wing set. This is actually a variant figure. This is R5-D4 with quote-unquote long stripes on the dome. Basically, these stripes on the dome are much thicker than, I guess, the original version of the R5-D4 figure that came in that Y-Wing Starfighter set. Other than that, there's a pretty standard looking Astro droid from back in the day. I really do appreciate the fact that Lego started actually bringing the print down from just like the first half of the dome. Like you can even compare it to the Clone Wars R2 I have on this side. Like it's so silly looking back at these older Astro droids and seeing the print only come to like half of the dome. So that was a nice improvement that Lego made to these figures. Next up, we have the Clone Wars R2-D2 figure. This came in the 2009 Clone Wars Y-Wing set. This is actually not a terrible figure. Like I'm always pretty critical of these Clone Wars variant Astro droid figures, but I think it's kind of interesting seeing R2 because this is the one Clone Wars droid that we actually have a movie version to compare it to. I always thought it was kind of interesting that even for the droid, I mean, it would have been super easy for them to just throw the classic R2 in these sets and kind of be done with it, but they did actually go out of their way to make him Clone Wars styled, which I guess you have to respect in some weird kind of way. You just notice the printing on the figure is, I guess, more in line with the Clone Wars style. You can even compare these two little, they're not necessarily hatches, but these are like little arms that can kind of flip out on R2 and compare it even to the printing on the super old figure over here. You can see just the lines and curves in it just have that more abstract looking Clone Wars style. The unfortunate thing about the figure I got here is you'll see his dome printing is just slightly askew, which kind of sucks because this is an old figure I can't really get anymore. But I mean, it's just the Clone Wars R2. Like, I don't super care to have, you know, a great looking version of this figure. But this is a look at the back of R2-D2's dome. Once again, some pretty nice printing on there. Sucks that it's askew, but I'll get over it. This isn't even an R2 that I would ever use in a mock. And our final figures today are going to be some droids. Starting off on the left side, we have the original Gonk droid from the 2003 Jabba's Palace set. This Gonk droid is in the old gray color. That's what makes it unique to that set. Lego did, since this, make an updated version of this Gonk droid in the dark bluish gray color, and that I believe came in the original Sandcrawler set. But it's so interesting looking at these original Gonk droids using, I mean, I don't know what you'd call this. I always kind of view this as like the mailbox piece. I think that's mostly what it is, but it's so interesting that this is kind of what they went with for the Gonk droid design. I mean, it works, like it worked for a while, but I still stand behind the idea that Lego just needs to come up with a custom mold for Gonk droids. I think that would be best case scenario. But in regards to this figure, it does have some nice printing on the front hatch here, but I think we just need to get rid of these boxy looking Gonk droids. We need to represent the curves on a Gonk droid, man. Gonk droids are some curvy boys. And the last figure we're gonna look at today is EVA4D without the sticker. So for whatever reason, there are two variants of this figure on Bricklink that don't have the sticker on the front. The one that I actually purchased had the sticker. I made the mistake of just buying one with the sticker. Wasn't a big deal because I literally just pulled the sticker off, and now this guy is gonna go on my minifig wall. But this is from the 2010 General Grievous Starfighter set. It's weird enough that this figure has two variants without stickers, and they're both from the same set, but I don't understand in general why like Bricklink has some figures that are the without sticker variants, because I mean, you get it out of the box and it's a sticker. Like, were there versions of General Grievous as Starfighter that just didn't come with stickers? That's the only reasonable explanation I could think of for why they would do that with these figures. But his most of his body is based on the traditional battle droid. Well, I guess the arms and the legs are, but he's sporting a unique kind of torso mold that has this giant apparatus connected to his back with I don't really remember this figure, or this guy from the Clone Wars. Like, I would assume maybe this is some sort of saw, but he's not like a fighting droid. He's like a repair droid. So I don't know why he'd have a giant saw on his back. I don't know, maybe it's a medical saw. Either way, he also has, I think, a flashlight on the other side of his back, and he's just holding some tools. And I mean, this is kind of a whatever figure to me. Like, this isn't something that I super care to have in my collection, but it's just nice to once again fill in some of those gaps in my minifig wall. So now that we're done checking out this week's figures, guys, let's go ahead to the time lapse and throw these bad boys on the wall. Minifigure wall, we meet again, but things are looking pretty positive here. I had a bunch of figures that basically didn't have a spot here. It was becoming more and more apparent that with the recent surge of minifigs on Brickset.com, with them adding in figures that weren't yet cataloged, a lot of the figures that I'm going to be putting on this wall in the next few weeks are going to be ones that are variants that weren't projected to be on this wall and thus don't have an actual spot. So speaking of figures that do have spots, we can take a look at the Gonk droid buddies up here. They're both looking so cute. We got the dark gray version and the dark bluish gray version hanging out right there. And then we have the Astro droid right here with the long stripes, and he's kind of crammed between those two spots because he was not considered when this wall was first constructed. If we move over to the right side of the wall, we have the, what's this guy named? EV84? I don't know, I don't keep up with that stuff, but there's a stickered version and the non-stickered version, and I apparently still need a third one of these because there are two non-stickered versions that are on Brickset and Bricklink.com. I don't know why, but whatever. It's not an expensive figure, so it's not the end of the world having to pick him up. We'll fast forward down to the bottom of the wall. We place the Han Solo right here in a pretty interesting spot. Like, if you look at this figure, it has no pupils. the printing is pretty lackluster, but it's like crammed in the middle of all of these like 2013, 14 figures that all are super detailed. So I'm not really sure what's up with that, but that's the minifigure number it was given, so that's where he's going to sit. But it is funny seeing him right here, and then like the Christmas Vader, and even the B-Wing pilot coming before it, which is one of my favorite minifigures of all time. And then finally, we'll take a look at the Han Solos right here. That's the newer one with the pupiled eyes that's kind of crammed in there, and then the older one without the pupiled eyes that's just sitting on the peg right there. So a lot of shuffling is going to be required to get this minifig wall in a place where all the figures here can actually sit on it, which is kind of annoying. Like, this is going to be such a process. The reason I've held off on shifting the wall so much is because of circumstances like this. Like, if I had shifted the wall initially when I missed some spots, there would have been 100 more figures that are basically added into this that would have rendered all that obsolete. So I want to keep biding my time. I want to keep trying to fill in the holes, and then, you know, if they do decide to add more figures in here that they weren't aware of before, I'm not going to have to shift an entire wall. I'm going to put that off as long as I can, because that is going to be such an insane process. But overall, the wall's looking pretty amazing, honestly. Like, this top half of the wall is just looking so full. If you compare this to one of the earlier episodes, I think you can tell a significant change in just the amount of figures that are on here. This is such an expensive series, you know, buying so many figures, trying to get holes filled on this wall, but it is certainly a very fulfilling series, just seeing the entire history of LEGO Star Wars come together right here on this wall. So that's going to finish up the video, guys. If you like what I do, go ahead and support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button, and I'll be back again very soon.